May bands of angels lead you to the heavenly gates. May the saints welcome you to paradise and guide you to the new Jerusalem. May the holy fire of angels bring you to your eternal resting place. And may you find celestial joy among the sacred souls blessed by our Lord.
This is BBC One.
And so it begins. Something massive is in progress. Something world-changingly colossal. The very moments you are living in now are history. This is so big it stops the world itself. Unfortunately, this once, it's not something that directly affects you. Although you can try telling that to the entire population of the world. It came out of nowhere and it came overnight. So we all woke up in a world that had stopped spinning while we slept. We expected the usual Sunday platter of cartoons, David Frost, faintly desperate religious programming and Country File on BBC One, the OU, Children's BBC, and Sunday Grandstand on BBC Two. Instead, there was no BBC One or BBC Two.
This is BBC Television from London. Normal programming has been suspended, and we now join Martin Lewis in the news studio.
Individual channel identities were suppressed. What had happened was so big, so powerful, it crushed BBC TV into a single broadcasting ingot. Where BBC's 1 and 2 should have been, the frequencies were showing the same thing: Martin Lewis's face. He was parachuted into the middle of history by the sheer twist of fate that he happened to live just around the corner from Television Centre. So he was the one they rang up to bring into the studio and interrupt Delon and Belmondo in Borsalino.
We've interrupted our programmes for a news report. We now go over to Martin Lewis in the news studio.
We interrupt this film to tell you we are getting reports that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been badly injured in a car crash in France. French radio is saying that the accident happened in western Paris when the car she was travelling in collided with another vehicle in a tunnel. The princess is reported to have been taken to hospital. There is no news of her condition, and as yet the report is unconfirmed. It's also reported that a passenger in the princess's car was killed. One report, quoting French police, says it is her friend Dodi Al-Fayed. It's also reported that the driver of the princess's car was killed. I repeat that these reports are unconfirmed. We will bring you more news as soon as we have it.
After 2 such interruptions, Lewis went home to get some sleep, assuming everything would turn out fine. Obviously, in that case, I wouldn't be doing this at all. Once the film was over, and with the situation decaying rather than improving, the BBC One feed was given over to the BBC World Service. And it was on their watch that the ultimate news broke.
Stephen, I have to interrupt there. Because within the last few moments, the Press Association in Britain, citing unnamed British sources, has reported that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died. This is not yet confirmed by any official source. So an unconfirmed source from the Press Association is that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died.
Soon Martin Lewis's phone was ringing again, and he was about to embark on an epic presenting stint on both channels, lasting around 7 hours, before Peter Sissons took over at 1 o'clock to do exactly the same thing. Meanwhile on ITV, whisper-thin Britpop non-starters Catch had their one and only moment of slight notoriety when the nighttime repeat of the chart show was faded out during the video to their highly existent single Bingo.
I go to public school. They never taught me anything.
To be replaced by Dermot Murnaghan and Nicholas Owen. A couple of hours later, GMTV had to take over, a little over 3.5 years old and with no idea how to cope. But at least it gave Dermot and Nicholas 3 hours of sleep before they came back. By then, of course, the news event was naturally over, but it was vast enough that we needed, as it turned out, many months to process it completely. On the day itself, it was a bleeding open wound, and the rolling news coverage was a morphine trip, leaving the nation woozy and punch-drunk. Nothing was certain anymore.
Normal programmes have been suspended for the moment. This means that this afternoon's edition of EastEnders has been postponed, and we hope to show that next Sunday. We'll bring you details of other changes to our programmes as soon as possible.
A country accustomed to planning its daily life by the Radio Times now found that document rendered useless. Its schedule deformed out of all recognition by the gravity of events. The news never ended, even though very little by definition could still happen. But it didn't stop. Repeats of the same information, sad talking heads from whoever they could find, hastily assembled obituary packages, interrupted by flags and the national anthem over and over. It was the same rolling lack of news on both sides. When the still neophyte Prime Minister delivered the speech which brought Martin Lewis to tears, the vast majority inevitably watched it on the BBC, but if you'd wanted, you could flick over to ITV to see the same thing rather eerily being delivered straight down the lens. The only respite came when the BBC managed to rustle up a couple of weather forecasts in the afternoon, delivered by a visibly upset John Ketley.
That's it from me.
Eventually the news collapsed, exhausted, finally bled dry. By the evening the BBC had 2 channels again. One was given over to a rolling tribute conducted by David Dimbleby, basically the same thing as today's news coverage, but without the need to pretend to be news. The other, almost uncomprehendingly, tried to put out some of what BBC One was going to show. Meanwhile, ITV eventually gave up and went back to their normal schedule, including Coronation Street and Sean Bean in Sharp. After some montages and services from St Paul's, the BBC finally went to bed, still barely comprehending this strange new world they had to guide us through. In a state of shock I call the Alma Syndrome. The effect on the human mind, individual and collective, when the sheer historical and social gravity of an event visibly deforms reality around it, even as it's taking place.